All right, good day, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to another Live the Fuel show. So today I'm bringing on a new guest co-host, as I always do. And we're recording this. I will timestamp it. We had a backlog of some few shows, but we're hitting this before 2025, not too far. And I'm trying to get him out to help kick off the new year because we're going to have some interesting conversations today. You might want to tune in, might want to take some notes because for years, again, we're here to fuel the health, business, and lifestyle of every listener out there, including my own self. But we've hit on so many things over the years. There's definitely different components and different ways to discuss and coach on mindset work or stress relief or just the impacts of physiological reactions, right? There's so much, depending on the scientist, doctor, or expert that I brought on this show or coach, we've hit from gut tied to the brain in your head, the two brain connections. We've talked about neurological responses with some brain surgeons. You name it, we've had a lot of fun. So today's guest co-host, he might be standing on the forefront of wellness innovation because when I dug into his background, there were some things that I didn't fully comprehend yet, which I love coming across because I'm here to learn along with my audience. And more importantly, part of the background was I saw a piece referencing some health issues with his wife. And as I'll call it more recently married man, it's 5.5 years now, and I'm almost 50. So I'm a late bloomer. And for the guys, people listening in, this gentleman's actually airing from California. And I used to fight some wildfire out there. So I might know a little bit about stress and the drain on the mind, the body, when you're doing 16-hour shifts for 2 weeks straight, fighting wildfires. I've talked about it for years because it changed my life. And I took that and transformed it into a positive transformation, my charity, my businesses, the podcast, etc. So I'm excited to dig into his journey with him and his wife and obviously what they're doing today because we actually have the founder of Vitalist Project on today. He is our guest co-host. So Jeffrey Williams, sir, welcome to the show.
Man, I'm so glad to be here. I love hearing you.
Little time difference. We only got 3 hours. It's fine.
That's right.
So let's dive right in. You've been at this. It's funny because I've had somebody just the other day. He's like, "Oh, some stuff that you have on your show sounds a little woo woo." I'm like, "Well, yeah, there might be some woo woo because maybe I'm sure you've heard this term." You're giggling because it's like, isn't it fun how things were woo woo, and then if you get enough documented results, or if you don't, I like to prove things myself. I call myself my own N1 experiment. I've learned that little term from scientists I've had on here. Like until you can get these documented studies or documented results or enough maybe testimonials in your world, then all of a sudden people start willing to listen. But in the beginning, it's woo-woo. And then it's like, oh, I don't have time for that. And then when they hear enough about it over the next couple months or maybe years, because it takes them a while, then it's like, oh, maybe there's something to that. So have you heard any of that in your life, Jeff?
Just a little bit, and I always giggle because it's one of the terms one of my teachers came up with was pragmagical. It's like,
oh, fun.
Because it's like
I'm taking that down as a note.
Yeah, because it's like woo-woo is very synonymous with magical thinking. And at the same time, most of the people are saying, oh, that sounds woo-woo, would probably label something like Ayurvedic medicine or Chinese medicine as woo-woo, or maybe even chiropractic as woo-woo. But yet, especially with Ayurveda and Chinese medicine, like these are solid traditions that have their own type of science built in.
And go back how long?
Yeah, and survived thousands of years still with efficacy. It's not like in China or India, they threw them out and embraced modern medicine as like full send, let's go. We get rid of our whole arts that we've, these science and arts that we've been practicing for thousands of years. They have so many gifts and they're so rich with just lenses to look at the body through that modern medicine hasn't caught up with. And even the people who are looking for that data to substantiate, if they understood the nature behind the medical industrial complex and how much money and clout it takes to get one of those studies to go off and then to get published, it's so massive. Worked with some good friends who've gone down that rabbit hole and are working with some great scientists and some universities. And so I met them, got to connect, and they were like, let's do a study. And like, great. because they love what I'm doing. And what would that look like? Well, it looks like it's going to be about a minimum 100 gram per participant. You need 40 participants to get solid data, because you need about 30 people of solid data. So you can guarantee 25% of the data is going to be throw out because of some variable that we didn't think of. So you just need about what, 4 million to start. And I'm like,
Oh, that's
great,
all. No
that's
big
it.
deal.
And
Yeah.
then only if, they decide to pick the data and then try to publish it, would you go to that next level where someone else would read about it. So
It's
it's a massive mountain.
it's a very big mountain. And now, to be fair, when you hear 4 million, and I've seen this done, and I've worked on some campaigns, not at that level, but over the years I've done in my marketing world, I've done impacts on, crowdfunding and crowdsourcing and things of that nature. So
Yep.
if there's enough interest in the power of the people,
Right.
you could pull off some very surprising upstarts or Kickstarters or whatever you want to call them, whatever
Yep.
platform you want to use. But here's my thing, back to your point, it's existed for hundreds and thousands of years. So I love how we say, oh, because I go to a chiropractor. I was just there last week. I'm there every single month. I get full 90-minute deep tissue massage every single month. Right now, I'm researching a new FMD. I'm looking for a new functional medicine doctor because I have, again, met enough of them in the podcasting world where I love that. Actually, there's a gentleman I just met a couple months ago here locally. He left 20 plus years as an ER doctor, like trauma level. And he goes, I'm just burnt out. I'm done.
Yeah.
And he's moving into the functional side because even he's realized it. He said, it's a never ending money train. The age old quote, follow the money.
Right.
Right. But he goes, okay, I get the money side. And yes. And that's where he and I aligned. I was like, yeah, if I, for example, a month and a half ago, crashed my mountain bike, collapsed along, broke some ribs. Wife was not happy. But I said, things happen. I'll heal up. I might have had to go to the hospital and get some, expensive x-rays and things. I was in and out in less than 48 hours. They were like, oh, you're already healing up. I'm like, well, yeah, because I treat myself like a temple. What you put in is what you get out. And
Exactly.
I've done yoga for years, and I've learned about the Ayurvedic ways, like you're talking about, a long time ago. And it never leaves my head. Once I learn something, I can't unlearn it. So yeah, I get, modern medicine, cut things, break things, get it.
Right.
But how is it especially just look at the Asian cultures.
Yeah.
Like, oh my God, the Chinese medicine history, the Japanese, I studied Japanese martial arts as a kid, Okinawan based. Love the history there. How is it? Because again, is it because it's just too natural and there's just no money in it? Basically, yeah. But I mean, what are your thoughts on that?
Well, I mean, yeah, let's identify that, it is a business, medicine is a business, and especially at that hospital level, it's like the kind of money that they need to make to run this incredibly expensive operation, deal with insurance companies, all that kind of stuff. Is like they need quick turnover and they need lifelong customers. And so it's not like rocket science to figure out why are they not giving them more than 8 hours of nutrition in their entire medical school? Why are they, throwing out these lifestyle pieces that are causal to the situation around health and medicine? It's because it doesn't have the other approach. Like, let's just make a comparative analysis to Chinese medicine, in which you paid your doctor every month as long as you're healthy, and as soon as you're not, they don't get paid until you are again, right? Just imagine that kind of flip of context in which we approach our health. It's like, I love that. I have a doctor that I pay because that doctor's invested in a relationship with me around my life, my lifestyle, how stress is impacting me, my relationships, all the things that affect our health, right? It's not just this idea that life is happening to us, right? Yeah. That's totally a Western approach. That's like, oh, suddenly I have cancer. And if we actually look at the data, no one just gets cancer. It's been decades in the making, or at least years in the making.
Cancer is the manifestation of many, many triggered negative things we've allowed into ourselves or upon ourselves and everything. I mean, because granted, we don't have documented studies back before 1900, but like, we didn't have the heart disease, the diabetes, and cancer rates that we have today.
Right. Yeah. So it's just a completely different approach in which the baseline is how well are you staying balanced? How well is your body able to stay in homeostasis? And that balance, from the way I look at it, it's that we are built just like everything else. Like you put an input in and needs to come out the other end, right? There's balance in all these different systems. And in the brain and nervous systems, what I spend the most of my focus on, at least primarily, because what we find is that you have to have in the autonomic nervous system balance between the sympathetic and parasympathetic.
Mm-hmm.
And if you know a little bit about stress, you know that it involves being outer reactive to a threat, something that you believe to be putting you in danger, right? Some sort of predator energy coming at you. And so what happens is the sympathetic part of that autonomic nervous system takes over. Brain's lateralize, it moves to a more primitive level of function in the back of the brain, the hindbrain. And so that part of our brain is now governing our perceptions, decisions, and actions, which is really good if you're actually in a survival situation. Like if you were running from a fire, like you'd want your sympathetic nervous system to take all your blood flow, glucose, and oxygen and put it in your limbs so you could run as fast as you possibly can for as long as you possibly can. That's an absolutely good use of that part of our brain.
Yeah.
Right?
I totally get that.
But when normal bills come up and your boss is a jerk and someone cuts you off in traffic, it's triggering the same sympathetic nervous system response, a stress response. And in doing so, we're not well adapted to this kind of stressor. So we've got all these stressors that are a myriad of types in our lives, and they have, unlike our primitive stress, like a bear showing up when we're picking berries, clear beginning, there's a bear. I've got to get out of here. So my blood flow, glucose, and oxygen goes to my limbs. I can either fight, run, freeze, and protect. Those are great options. And then there's a clear ending. The bear's gone.
What are your thoughts on the desensitizing process? Like, there's two schools of thought on that, right? Some people don't want you so desensitized, right? Like in the extreme fight or flight states. Like for example, like crap can hit the fan. I mean, a storm can roll it. Like blizzards, hurricanes. Again, my wild and firefighting background. We joked around it before we hit record today. I'm not really that phased. Like we had a couple local wildfires here, and people were texting me and blowing me up, like, "Yo, you got to come out of retirement." I'm like, it'll be fine. It's gonna be all right. And like, what do you mean it's gonna be all right? I'm like, it's the Appalachian Trail. Like, there's nothing up there. Let it burn. Let it clean all the crap up. You know, but stuff like that, like that doesn't faze me. Does it mean I'm fully desensitized? No, it's just thanks to my training and thanks to those very, very extreme, stressful situations, which I was definitely messed up for a little while after serving. That I agree with. But then when I met my wife all these years later, and she goes, I don't get it. She's like, crap can hit the fan. You can watch a car get flipped on a highway. You're just going to pull over, grab a medical kit that you happen to have in every one of our vehicles. I'm like, because I like to have a medical kit. It makes me feel good, warm and fuzzy. And then go help. She's like, that's not a big deal. But we're trying to book a ski trip to Colorado. And like within 24 to 48 hours, you're losing your shit. And I was like, I'm not really losing. She's like, you're losing your shit. I was like, I just like to be very organized and dialed in and blah, blah, blah. She's like, but again, the world could come to an end. You're not even phased. What are your thoughts on that?
I mean, I would say you could call it desensitized, or you could call it discernment and adaptation, right? And I'm in the business of helping people become better adapted to modern stress, which basically means they're able to maintain your center, right? As conditions all around you increase in chaos, you actually drop in more deeply because you have the ability to discern, like, is this life and death for me? Or is this an opportunity for me to, in your case, like share the skills that you have inherently? I'm the same way. Like I've been out rock climbing and watched somebody fall and dislocate a leg. And I like walk over and I'm like, okay, get them stable. And then I like put their leg back into position. And they're like, how did you do that? I was in so much pain. Yeah. And then they can walk again. But it's because I've been there cultivating
with shoulders. I got you. I used to, when I lived in Golden, Colorado. Oh my God. We had bolted routes everywhere. I did so much. I mean, not a lot of trad, but a lot of sport climbing. And
me too.
You don't want to yank a limb out.
So it happens. And then same with, like you said, car accidents, other things. Like when your nervous system is just been so for most people, they've spent most of their lives in sympathetic dominance, meaning like they're just barely dipping into parasympathetic just enough to keep the wheels turning. But this isn't a very healthy place to be, because when you're in sympathetic dominant stress state, your whole entire, not only do blood flow, glucose and oxygen go to the limbs, so it means takes it away from all the viscera, your immune system, digestive system, tissue repair, cell function and replication, those all get minimal voltage while your body gets the rest. But when you're in that, the way you perceive the hormones that are cascading through your physiology are corrosive. So they're creating extra acids, they're creating a buildup of waste. The body's starting to store things around that it doesn't have the energy or enzyme force to break down because you're in this stress state. So the longer you're in it, the more the symptomology increases. And back to the hospital, the medical thing, if we understood that over 90% of our doctor's visits are stress related, that means we're going in and we think it's, this is going on or this is going on. All of that, those are just like brilliant feedback in the field that's saying, hey, you're out of balance. And if we don't get into parasympathetic soon, then it's only going to get worse. Like the spiral of degeneration is going to get louder and louder. And that can show up in your physiology, of course. It can show up in your sociology, your relationships. It can show up in your mind as people become more and more polarized. That's also a symptom of stress. And then back to what you mentioned, mindset, I call it cosmology. Like, how do I view and experience the world? That gets distorted. Now I'm like, oh, the world's tough. This place, it's unfair. All those sort of things are actually reflections hoping to wake us up back into balance, help us get back into our nervous systems in a
I
way
love where we're
that's
hitting on this, because
functional.
I believe this is, would you then agree then everything we're talking about, it's really a never ending process.
Yes.
You're always going to be growing. It's always going to be morphing and changing, because obviously life, we get all kinds of stuff thrown at us. But like,
Yeah.
this literally happened this morning. I had a dental cleaning, so much fun. But I was done early. I was like, she's like, oh, you're healthy, you're great. I'm like, awesome. I was like, quick visit. I was like, I'm going to swing by, support local, go to a local coffee shop. And their parking was pretty full, but they have an extra spot around the side, but their lot connects asphalt to a gas station. So I always come around slow just in case somebody's whatever. Sure enough, a woman comes whipping around the pump and lays on the horn and slams on her brakes right in front of me as I'm like going slow motion around the corner. And I'm like, and her hands are flying up and she was losing it. I was like, first, I don't need to flip the bird anymore. I'm like, so right. Some people, I'm just like, I look at her and I was like, I just went like this. I was like, calm down. I was like, do you want the spot? Like, I'm doing sign language in my car. I'm like, do you want it? It's okay. And she's doing this, and she's hitting the horn again. And I was like, I'm just standing there. I'm sitting in my car looking at her. And I'm like, what do you want me to do? I'm not blocking her way anywhere. Like, she's just losing. I'm like, am I in LA right now? Like, what is going on? We just had Thanksgiving. Like, she's having a case of the Mondays, my friend. I was like, I just had to giggle. And I was just like, have a nice, I just was like, bye-bye. I was like, I just drove away. I didn't even stop at the car. I said, you know what? There's so much bad energy here right now. I was like, I drove 15 minutes out of my way to go to a different place because I didn't want to be anywhere near that.
Yeah. You're like, good. Yeah.
I was like, man, this is crazy. It was 10 o'clock in the morning.
Yeah. But that's how chronic it is. And like I've tested personally over 10,000 people. There's a really simple way to test people that we do before and after every engagement. And it can tell me whether or not you're in balance or out of balance. And what that imbalance or out of balance means.
So she's out of balance, right?
Are you dominantly in one hemisphere and you have excessive tension and protective resistance on one side while the other side's having a brownout? That is something that is going on across the board. Like 99% of those 10,000 people when they walked in the door were out of balance. Now I've worked with everyone from Olympic gold medalists to the best 100-mile runners in the world, and they are shocked because they're like, but I do all this and I'm not stressed, and people think that all the time. So we as a culture have to get over the idea that I know what stress is, and stress is when I'm like stressed out by my
Mm,
boss or stressed out by this situation. There is a neurophysiology to stress that's measurable, that's
mm.
tangible, that you can experience. And when you're come back into balance, that experience is completely different. And to start to think about, if you know that a stress state is half brained at best, now if you assess your life and you look at your life and you go, wow, my life is this good, and I'm doing this on half brain or less, like what would my life look like if I had whole brain functioning, if I
That's what I
had
love about
access
simple
to all
things
of it?
like, I mean, years ago, every so often I cycle back to it if I feel like I'm losing connectivity, but like something as simple as like gratitude exercises. Now,
Yeah,
some people, again, somebody back in the day, back to that woo woo thing, people were like, what are you doing? I was like, it's a free app. I just downloaded it. I was like, it was just to get me to trigger my brain differently in the mornings. I was like, I set an alarm and I was like, what am I thankful for right now or grateful for right now? And a few weeks ago, you heard, obviously, I'm sure y'all, even the West Coast, you guys heard about the tragedies of Hurricane Helene that came and ripped through Tennessee and North Carolina. Well,
oh
thanks
yeah,
to our tax dollars paying for me, I'm a really good surgeon with a chainsaw. So I own very large saws to this day only because that's what I hiked with as a firefighter. And I love it. So I'm always helping people around here, neighbors, friends, everything else. I'm like, I told my wife, I was like, hey, I got a slow week coming up. I'm going to North Carolina. I'll see you in like 5, 6 days. And she's like, what? I was like, I can't ignore this anymore. Like the news stopped
yeah,
talking about it. There's 600 people. The homes are gone. Like they're
yeah,
living in tents with their children. I was like, I'm I got to go do something. And I literally was there. I was cutting up people's home, or not their homes, but getting them in and out of their driveways. It was amazing.
yeah,
It warmed me up. Now getting there was easy for me, right? Because of my past training. Luckily, I'm pretty successful right now. I'm like, okay, financially, I'm fine. Time wise, I'm fine. It's actually, maybe you'll appreciate this. Maybe there's some mindset stuff or neuro thing here going on. But years ago, I heard a quote and I ended up buying the .com. I never did anything with it yet, but freedom trifecta to me. So freedom, obviously,
hmm
is manifests differently with everybody. And through the years of mindset work, thought work, breath work, the yoga days, everything. And I've been through, I go to the extremes and I go to the calm. Like I do yoga and then I used to coach people in CrossFit. Like I'm all over the place, but I love diversity. I love testing myself. So out of
yeah,
the freedom trifecta, I said, a goal in my life is to be able to just say, I have the time freedom, the financial freedom, and the location freedom.
hmm
If I can just simplify things down to those three things, I'll be a happy man. And that trip confirmed it. I was like, I could afford to take off. I have the freedom. I have the skills.
yeah,
I'm like, let's go. And oh my God, it was such an amazing trip. Now, from that, it's a lot of miles, a lot of driving. There was a lot of money spent. I gave, like, I emptied my vehicle. I gave away almost everything when I was there. I even gave away a chainsaw. I was like, I'll
yeah.
just buy it.
And
I'll
you're
just,
filling the chainsaw up, and you're putting oil in it, and
yeah. And then when you get home, though, like, I'm probably 8 hours into the drive home. And I just started thinking about, you know, actually some of the people I helped were texting me, thank you again, blah, blah, blah. And then it's just like the emotion
hmm
just like hits you, like just, and I'm tired too. Cause I was going from sunrise to sunset. I was like, I'm just going to do as much as I can. If the sun's shining, I'm getting it done. And it was, again, it's not a brag. It's just an explanation here of, I think I got hit with just the emotional stress or something. Cause on the drive home, like, I literally started tearing up, like I just out of nowhere, and it's just I felt warm, I felt good, I was tearing up, and I'm like, woof. I was like, I'm tired, but I'm good at the same time. There was just so much flowing through me. What are your
yeah.
thoughts on that? Is that
Well, I mean,
technically stress triggered, or
that is actually stress release and recovery.
oh,
So
okay,
the emotion, like a person like you, I'm actually very similar in the way that like I can show up in an emergency or in someone's life who's going through chronic, disease, or I can show up with dozens of them and so I'm just like serving, 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 and I can stay really centered and grounded because it's like it's what lights me up, and
yeah,
this is what I do. This is what my nervous system, I've groomed it to do this really well. And it doesn't mean there isn't an emotional component to that. Like some situations, it might be like, wow, there under the surface, there is some things that are moving and stirring, but is it appropriate for me to express that emotion right then in this situation where that person is in the emergency, right? And so
Very, very good
it's
point.
actually
I was
very,
not, I gave the one woman asked for a hug. I gave her a hug, but like,
yeah,
I was the, I was focused, like you're saying,
right.
like I was dialed in. I'm like, she's like, do you need anything? I'm like, you can go back in. She was a retired Navy veteran, PTSD. She had to wear special headphones while I was running the chainsaws outside, but she was trying to work her job. And I
Yeah,
said, I need nothing.
yeah,
Everything in that Jeep, I'm ready to go. Go take care of what you got to take care of. And I was there from sunrise to sunset that day, and she didn't have to worry about me at all. And
yeah.
like you said, I'm able to shut out any kind of distractions and just get things done. So,
Yeah. And at some point, your nervous system, an intelligent nervous system, is going to move. It's going to emote, right? It's energy and motion. And that emotion is going to move because if you don't, you're going to carry that with you, right? And a
mhm.
lot of people do this, right? We all know when we've suppressed what we're really feeling. We've all been in the moment where we've suppressed it so much we don't even know what we're feeling. And so that natural inclination of like you driving triggered a shift, and as you shift from sympathetic to parasympathetic, there's often energy that needs to move. And so, in my work, it's like we do have people breathe in certain ways until those emotions move. There's a certain kind of workout we call the stress flush. That means if I'm going to get you out of a stress state by signaling your brain and resetting it, into balance, then if say you've been in a stress state for 20 years
Mhm.
chronically, that means you've been readying for a battle that never came. So then there's ways in which we would challenge the body to actually flush those hormones out of the system because as soon as your brain comes back into that parasympathetic sympathetic balance, the whole neurophysiology and the hormones all change and the body starts to move towards taking care of repairing, eliminating all the things that it had been putting on the backlog. And that's why,
That I get.
just
I
to
mean,
make the
it's like if you
connection.
cut yourself, your body's going
Yeah,
to send so much energy right to that wound. Like the human body's an amazing machine. But I've definitely we've had conversations in the past, not from your expertise, but on different angles where they talk about again your body moves from fight to flight. Right? It's going to protect the core organs and everything else.
yep,
Never thought about 20 years of being stuck in fight mode. Like, oh my god, that's pretty crazy. I mean, that's a
yeah.
lot.
And it's more common than you know. I mean, and there's also like there's a spectrum in the stress response, right? So there's like I'm actually in it, which is the adrenaline. Like I'm walking down an alley and someone jumps out. Like I want that adrenaline high level stress response to come out because I'm more likely to survive, right?
Mhm.
And what happens is that most people have something that will trigger them into a stress response, but they never get the everything is okay signal. So we go from that adrenaline producing high beta stress state to a lower level beta wave, which is cortisol producing. So now we're like, I don't know when exactly the battle is coming, but it's coming. And so cortisol is here to numb me out in case I need uh, to handle some predator or some situation that's dangerous. And then what happens though is that in order for your liver and your brain to trigger the cortisol production, it has to rob pregnenolone, which is the precursor to making all these other nice hormones and DHA and all this stuff for your brain. So while we're waiting around for this really interesting potential predator to come at us, we're basically killing ourselves. And so at the core of all disease is stress because our bodies are actually completely brilliantly designed to maintain our balance, to maintain our health and our vitality. But it's stress, being stuck in that chronic long term stress, that's like robbing all of those processes and just giving them the minimal voltage. So the longer you do that, the more you have these cesspools where yeast mold and fungus, which are the undertakers, are going to be actually employed. The body's going to be like, all right, I can't get to that. I'm still waiting for the bear to come around and go away. So I'm going to allow for the body to create neoplasms and cofactors and other things that are going to sheath these parts of my body from my own immune system. So we have cancer or autoimmune conditions. All these things are just long-term stress manifesting louder and louder in worse and worse ways
And we're
over time.
ignoring it, and we're not allowing our body or our mind or all of it to empower itself to heal.
Yeah.
I
And
get
this
that.
back on your
Yeah.
scientific data thing, I want to make one point is like this is also where scientific data can lead you wrong because
Mm.
what they've done, so for instance, is like testing people's brains. Okay, so we take a massive sampling across, America, and we got all these different ages, and we go, wow, well, it looks like normal, looks like almost everyone's in a beta wave one hemisphere dominant state. I guess that's normal, right? So we look at data
Or
and we
that's
make
the new normal,
right,
right?
but that
Yeah.
isn't normal, right?
No.
That is not normal. That's not healthy. And so it shouldn't be something that we're setting the bar and going, well, your brain looks like everyone else's brain, so you're normal, right? That is the danger of looking at whatever, your thyroid levels, your liver function, like all of those things is that as much as there's data and they're comparing your numbers with these other stats, that's based on what, right? It's based on a sampling of a population that is living in this post-industrial technocracy where we've got so many toxins, we've got so many stressors, the nervous system isn't well adapted to it. So we're putting a benchmark in a place of actual dysfunction instead of looking at who and where are the most healthy, vital populations expressing at the highest, and know that that's the potential for everyone
Well,
across the
I had an
board.
expert years ago to like, wait a minute, what did you used to do? It was like, the fire thing. I mean, it's been since 2011 was the last year I served. But they were like, oh, you must have been so healthy. And I'm like, interesting question. Where are you going with that? Like, well, you said you were on a hotshot crew. I'm like, yeah. So you were outdoors all the time. I'm like, actually, we were always in the outdoors. We would go to a fire camp to resupply, but then leave the camp. We would not sleep there because it was too loud with the generators and the portable lighting in the middle of a field.
Yeah,
We were hammering hard all day, every day. So we would just drive away like a couple miles down the road, find another random field. There was no noise. So yes, it's true. I'm sleeping under the stars every night. We wouldn't even deploy tents in 2 years. I did a tent twice. You just
wow.
throw your bedroll on the ground. So you're earthing, you're grounding. It's just Mother Nature's all around you. Yeah, I had some of the best sleep in my life. Also, we were beating the crap out of ourselves 16 hours a day. So
Right.
even though I had all that, and the government funded nutrition was questionable. So that aside, by the end of your fire season, we were seasonal employees. You're doing 1,800 to 1,900 hours in
Wow.
6 months.
Wow.
So you talked about cortisol earlier.
Yeah.
I know for a fact my cortisol levels at the end of a fire season, that's not normal. Like I remember at my rookie year, I booked a trip to Ireland. I always wanted to go to Ireland. It's my bloodline. I was like, all right, I'm going to go backpack Ireland. And people are like, you've been backpacking for 6 months straight and you want to go backpack some more? And I'm like, yeah, it's fun backpacking, not
Yeah.
40 pounds of gear and a 30-pound chainsaw on my shoulder. And I haven't
Yeah.
showered in 2 weeks
Yeah.
and I'm sleeping with ash and smoke all around me. Like, no, I'm going to go like have a whatever drink I need or whatever, do whatever I want in Ireland, So
Yeah.
I backpacked it. It was great. But I felt it there. I did not have the energy for probably 2 to 3 months or the mindset to want to go work out. I mean, in that
Mm.
job, we were doing, if we weren't on a fire summit, we were doing a workout every day just to keep things loose and limber and functioning and
Yeah.
helping release stress. And you don't want it all pent up. Like we were always like raring to go to the next fire, all these things you're talking about. But
Mhm.
I remember, I don't know if it's called a cortisol flush or whatever, but at the end of each of those seasons, it would kick in within about, depending on my lifestyle back then, the first month or two. And I got better at it. Once I was aware of it, then
Yeah.
I would start focusing on these ways, maybe not your ways, but I mean, how
Yeah.
do
But
I,
ways to move it.
how do I release? How do I exit this just because I've been fighting for 6 months straight? So it's like, okay,
Yeah.
not 20 years, but um,
Yeah.
it's
But it's
funny. We're
huge.
connecting all the things here. So
Yeah. And one of the things you said is about being outside. And, the other massive stressor for us human beings as having these human bodies is that we're all indigenous to
mhm.
planet Earth. Every one of us, right? And our bodies evolved here. And so in the last just very short amount of time, if you think about human, Homo sapiens sapiens, how long we've been around, it's a minimum 100,000, if not a million years of us being in the planet on the planet in a similar fashion to what these bodies are like now. So if you take, imagine humanity lasting one day, 24 hours, right? We've been doing this thing, spending time indoors and watching screens and having devices for like the last second before
Yeah.
midnight on
Yeah, the
that
last
24-hour
15, 20
day.
years have had so much advancements. We were never, for example, I mean, that's why I've had multiple brands on the show. The founders of I'm a red blight, dude. I got my blue blockers. I'm standing on a grounding mat right
Yep.
now.
Yep.
If I learn something, I can't unlearn it, man. I'm like, I'm embracing technology.
Yeah.
So while I'm embracing this influx of technology, which is I know is doing negative things to me, what can I do to help counter it? Because
Hmm.
I still have to make a living, right? I still got to
Right.
run a business, you know.
We're gonna do it, but if we don't acknowledge and get outside, if we acknowledge nature, our nature, because that's what gets us. I mean, go down by a river and just, with no phone and no cell phone service and just hang out and listen to that river and
Wait,
watch that
Jeffrey, you're
river.
supposed to leave your phone in the car?
Yeah,
Like, yeah,
your
try it.
nervous system will shift, right? It's going to, because it's our native environment and we're going to go out. I mean, that is, nature heals. The body knows how to heal, but we have to put it into an environment in which all of those external stressors and demands are reduced to the point where the body feels like, oh, everything is okay,
Yeah.
right? And that shift in our perception allows for a triggering of complete change in our physiology. And you cannot live very long, at least not healthy, if your sympathetic is just dominating. If you think of it as a teeter-totter, right? It's like it's supposed to speed up during the day and it's supposed to slow down as the parasympathetic turns on at night. This is a natural balancing act. And for most people, it's just jacked. I mean, the sympathetic is just turned on and locked in, and we just get these tiny little dips. Even our sleep, if most people do a sleep test and if they monitor it, like the body is scared to go into delta because it wants to keep some part of its awareness there vigilant,
Yeah,
just
our
in case that
circadian
predator shows
rhythms.
up.
I've
Yep.
tried explaining this to my wife. I love her. She's a very smart woman. She's an equine doctor for horses, large
Cool.
animals, and she's a
Very
doctor
cool.
chiropractic for animals. So she has the science and but then won't wear the blue blockers. Sits there playing her mind. She has mind games on an iPad, watching TV at night. She can go to sleep, but she's always getting up in the middle of the night. I can
Hmm.
sleep like a rock. But also, when we bought this house 3 years ago, I got woods all around me, and my woods touched my neighbor's woods, but it was all choked up. And I was like, I found the deer paths, and I'm a mountain biker and a
Yeah.
hiker and a rock climber. And I'm like, I just started cutting my own trail. And my wife is like, "What are you doing?" It's like, "Well, I spent 10 years cutting trails at the local parks for other mountain bikers. I'm going to make my own." So I have a half a mile loop in my woods out here. And
Yeah.
I throw a weight vest on once in a while or not. I was like, I'm gonna go take my dog on the trail. No phone.
Hmm.
I do it probably twice a day. And I step away from the tech, leave the phone in the house. I'm just going out for a stroll, take my
Yeah.
good old time. Fresh air, no technology, no phone. Sometimes with the dog, sometimes with not, sometimes with a weight vest, sometimes not. Depends on my mood. So
Yeah. And it can be like, I have a lot of people like, but that just like, how am I supposed to prioritize that? I've got so much going on. I'm so busy. If you just do it, and you'll notice like, oh my gosh, one, you get to witness how monkey minded you are, right? Because we
mhm.
all are. And you get out there and you're just like, first you're walking, oh my gosh, shouldn't I be doing this and this? And then next thing you're like, ooh, that bird just landed. Like, oh, the things that start to happen that bring you into the present,
Yeah.
right? Because another way to look at stress, and I think this might even be like the most important way to look at it, is that when we're in a stress state, we're still in response to something in the past, right? So it bifurcates our consciousness from the present moment, and it's still responding to the past, which means it's also projecting into the future.
Mm.
It's the if and when this happens, then all those things that start to happen means you're not present. So to get fully present, it's like all the things I'm doing for somebody else is I'm engaging them in a way that hopefully creates a portal into this present moment, because it's in this present moment that it's all happening, one, and two is where the healing happens. You can't heal unless you're here. You're not
Yeah.
going to heal by thinking about a month from now or thinking about the
I agree
time
with you.
a
Being
year ago.
present is a big struggle nowadays. I agree with that 100%. When I was in my 20s, I was in a corporate job, cubicle monkey life, but I was working my way up in the company and trying to get the next promotion, the next this, that. I was single. I had barely dated. Then I started going back to school on nights and weekends because I wanted to study psychology. So I was just like,
Hmm.
I was full-time gig, full-time school on nights and weekends when I'm not doing that. I'm like, what am I doing? I mean, I think back now, granted, I was just, I've said this on the show before, psychology wise, one of my professors called it the domains of life, right? He goes, now he's like, depending on the expert you talk to, could be 5, could be 6, could be 7, depending on your life. You'll have like love, you'll have family, you'll have career, you'll have education, health, right? Whatever those are. He's like, take a zero axis and plug them all in if you want to get all scientific. And then he's like, if too many of those domains drop below zero axis because you have no focus, he's
Yeah,
like, you have higher stress levels. Now, they were speaking about this from a psychological standpoint, but I see
yeah,
some alignment here with what you're
definitely.
hitting us on. Is like, he's like, listen, you can't get all 6 or all 5 shooting through the roof. He's like, you're always going to have the high and the low,
Hmm.
but if you're more aware of it and you can try and keep at least most at that zero access, and then you're always going to have your priorities, and then
Right.
that might change. But so he
And
hit on
that's
that.
actually the key.
Yeah.
That piece right there, the priorities are what I call values, or I like the Greek word actually telos the
Well,
most
I was just in
for
Greece this
this.
year. Tell us.
Yeah.
Okay.
Telos. So what that the definition or the translation, the closest thing is like the mind's end, the
Hmm.
highest value, your chief aim. All of those are ways to look at what your telos is or what your highest value is. And so another way to frame that is what is it that inspires you and fulfills you the most? You're just like you didn't have to think or give yourself a bunch of like, should I or should I not go down and help these people out in North Carolina that have been through this catastrophe?
Yeah.
You just did it. You impulsively did it. No one had
I
to
delayed by
motivate
2
you.
weeks, but then it ate at me. It just kept
Right.
eating.
But you see, something inside of you was like, this is actually what fulfills me. This is what inspires me to be there with people in the midst of what difficulty and challenges they're in and be of service. So like you're gonna orient your entire life to that. Like it's what you care about most. And what I found in helping others find their health again is that you can get all the diagnoses and all of the prognoses and all the names and labels for all the things, and you can even treat those things, and maybe those things will even go away, but you don't get healthy until you actually reveal what it is that inspires you, that you love and care about, that fulfills you, and you start to fill your life with it. You said something earlier about asking yourself good questions about like gratitude practices, and
Mhm.
your life is absolutely the quality of your life is absolutely dependent on the quality of the questions you ask yourself. So if
Mm.
you get up, it's like might seem woo woo to someone, but if you just ask yourself good questions, what that does is it wakes up that inspiration, it wakes up that innate intelligence and wisdom and frames your reality in a reality. Because reality, as all the ancient teachings say, is like it's a balance. That means you have equal support and challenge all of the time. So
Mhm.
there's no fantasy land where it's like it's all good. I finally made it. It's just shits and giggles from here on out, right? It's like that's fantasy land. That's
Right.
infatuation with something that isn't real. And so
Well,
trying to
I think that
attain,
comes to harmony, right? I think the sooner, and again, the way I think today is not the way I thought 10, 20 years ago. And I still have a lot of growth ahead of me. That's what we're talking about here
yeah,
today is that actually there's a quote I've used for years now. It's like, I'm just now at a different place on the timeline. And I could be talking to a friend or a colleague or another guest on this show. And maybe I've learned something from you or from somebody else that
yeah,
they haven't heard yet. So again, back to that woo-woo joke, right? But it's like, okay, but it's okay. We're just at a different place on a timeline. You just have to, I like to say catch up, right? Because they could be at a different place on their timeline and they might have already leaped ahead of me. Maybe they've authored 10 books or whatever, right? But
mhm,
it's a process. And I've learned that it's like, if I could take a deep breath, let it out, and then just think about, okay, where are we at today? What has been successful? What has got me to where I am? There's always going to be mistakes. There's always going to be
yeah,
challenges because I truly believe every challenge, every mistake we come across, it was meant to be. It was meant to rock your world if it got that
yeah,
bad, and because we're truly an amazing species, and we can rise above that. We can learn from it and grow from it. And
Yeah.
then we reach a place where we're at today, where we're talking on microphones. It's like, well, what if one person, hopefully hundreds and thousands, but what if one person takes something good out of this,
Hmm.
and that helps them advance in their timeline? This is what I love about podcasting. I was like, that's what I love talking to people like you. It's like, dude, we could be getting through to somebody right now and helping them release and
And
progress forward.
what you said about the timeline thing, and just, and everyone's timelines are going to be a little bit different, but I was just writing about this yesterday because from like 18 till maybe even up to almost 30, I would spend hours a day, every day, doing practices, whether that was breathing, movement, being outside, but a ton of inner work. It was like, in a sense, like a psychonaut, just like what is possible in the inner realms. And I had the freedom to do that. And so I just did it for shits and giggles, like, because I was like, yeah, this is what I have time to do. This is what I'm going to put my energy into. Right. But then in the mid-20s, I had kids at 25 or 6. And then I just noticed, like, okay, then it became, well, those same things that I'm doing, I'm going to just turn it into a business because I want to do this. So I'll just lead people through the kind of experiences I'm having. I did really well. Then, but I feel like what it did is it built up this inner reservoir. I feel like the balance in life is extrapolated out in many dimensions, but one of those is like that inner outer balance. And we're drawn out so much. And we talked about the tech, and it pulls us out so much that if we're not paying tithing into the inner world, the balance gets out in that way as well. But in my 30s, it became like, now I'm running businesses. I've got multiple kids. I've got land I'm trying to grow food on, all these things. And so those same practices became maintenance. Like, oh, I'm feeling out of balance. I better do a practice. Right. And then,
because you know what works.
Right. I know it works, and I know how to keep myself calibrated and balanced in that way. Then it feels like hit my 40s, and then those first 5 years of the 40s, it was like streaks. Like I just do like really intensive, and then I completely not do it for a while. And then I hit like mid 40s, and I'm after that, more recently, I'm going, something is completely different. It's not like I don't have the same fantasy like that. Oh, these practices are going to make me enlightened or do whatever the thing that maybe I thought they would. And instead it's like, but the curiosity has come around where I'm like, now I feel like I need it as a discipline, not because like I have to do the practice every day, but I need the space and time for me, like the alone time, kind of like your drive back from serving, and helping others. It's like, I have to build that in. And I know that part of my stress is that I have opened the doors to serve all my clients, all my students, my kids, my wife. And so if I just stay open, everyone's going to fill that time.
True.
Right? It's going to be,
we all have 24 hours in a day. So
right,
it's how we choose to fill them. So
yeah. And so it's just been like, oh, I really am prioritizing giving myself that time every day. And it often looks like taking a walk early in the morning on my property. And, I got 26 acres. I can cruise and take a nice long stroll. And then it's like doing some movement practice and having some tea and writing. But it's like taking that time and going like, it's really a personal values thing, like where valuation on myself, like, am I worth this time? Right? Yeah. Because so much in our world is measured, like my personal value is measured by what can I do for everybody else. And that's a lot of the way the world works. And I've just been like, whoa, how did that slip in there? Like I'm even doing that, where I'm showing up in my life because I make value and there's an exchange, or I make value because I care and I want that love exchange or whatever it is. But how much am I stopping just to be like, turn that attention inside and what's there?
That's what I loved about your branding, which I want to screen share as we're coming to the end of the show here, because I really I love keywords. It's sales and marketing consultant is what I do. But everything I've heard today is around that, that Vitalist project, right? But vitality, like everything you just got done sharing is that vitality has shifted in different decades, and how it manifests now is completely different than what you thought about 18 into your 20s and 20s into your 30s and
Right.
now 30s into 40s, right? It's like, because now you're a father and you have land, and we always have this shift of life. But I love, because this, by the way, is this meant to be an infinity symbol?
Yes. It's
Aha,
both
okay.
like, and there's the V and the P in it as well, right? So
Okay.
there's,
Well, I figured that too, but I was like, dude, because again, the whole point here is that it should be never ending, right?
yep.
Vitality. So
Hmm.
we're going to get the shocks, we're going to get the challenges,
Yeah.
but how are we ensuring that our vitality maintains, and if not grows, actually throughout life? I truly believe. I love how you use that word, enlightenment. Um, I've met some amazing, people who have run very successful companies, and or now become, they're paid public speakers, whatever. And
Hmm.
some of the most successful and quote unquote rich people, whether it be financially or otherwise, they'll tell you, like, they don't talk about their successes. They're
Yep.
usually reflecting. They're not dwelling on them. They reflect on what they learned from that past mistake or that past challenge, because it's helped them leap forward in life. And they've
Yes.
also, the biggest thing I hear is letting it go. It's in the past for a reason. You can't change that. If you want to
Hmm.
think back on it, take the good out of it, right? Okay, wow,
Yep.
losing that helped me get here, for
Right.
example. I
Yeah.
love that.
Asking those, again, asking quality questions. If you know how to ask questions, especially about things that seem to be the most difficult, challenging, problematic, things that you resent or despise in your life, if you know how to ask questions, you'll find that there was, like you said before, gold, right? There's more gifts in the challenges than in the support,
Mm-hmm.
most for everybody, because that's how we grow. It's always equal. No matter what we perceive in the moment, we think, oh my God, I have no support right now in this problem. You do. And we have just as much support as challenge in every moment. And if we don't look at them and ask the right questions, then those become like, rocks in the flow. We said we were going to talk about flow. So think about the nervous system as a flow system, and the brain is like a superconductor, and it's receiving the faster than light energy, and then it's conducting it. So if you have a whole brain working, it's going to spin that energy down and through the system. And
Mm-hmm.
if you're holding on to big resentments or big fantasies, those act like blocks in the stream. So now, in order for that flow to move through and say down your spine, it's going to meet resistance, and it's going to push you into mental activity. Now you're thinking about the future, or reminiscing about the past, instead of staying in that ever presence, which is trying to and is transmitting through you constantly. But
Now, is
it's
that a
when
lot
we
what's gone into, because obviously we do have to bring the show to a close. I have another one coming up, but I wanted to hit on this because I did dig through your site. And I know you guys have done retreats, or actually, you just did one. And I also know that you have this EDGU protocol.
yep,
Is
EDGU, yeah.
is that basically what you've built into your digital content? Because obviously not everybody can be physically there in person.
Right.
And
Yeah.
I saw you have a lot of digital content as well. So I want to make sure we hit on that, because if we did get through to a couple of people and they're ringing true to how you speak and how you educate, I want to make sure they can find you guys. So, and obviously we're
Yeah.
going to put all this in the show notes for everybody
Yeah,
too. But
no, absolutely. It's what I've done is I've just created like a stack of systems that bring balance. And so those are through, there's hands-on approach, obviously, but there's also movement systems, breathing systems. I use voice work a lot. And all of that is going to help to bring about that balance. So yeah, right there, you've got
oh, and you do
evolutionary
teacher training
embodiment.
too. Cool.
Yeah, so we teach people how to do this and teach movement. It's called EDGU, Evolutionary Spinal Maintenance. You probably share the link, haveahappyspine.com, and I give out a free workshop on it. It's
All
so
right. Well,
you'll learn about stress, the neurophysiology of stress, and then how to work with your system in movement. So I mentioned whenever you stress out, you always lateralize into one hemisphere. Well, what's beautiful about the body is that left hemisphere controls right side of the body and vice versa. So if I have a movement system that crosses my midline regularly, and what happens is it forces cross-modal communication in the two hemispheres. So now those hemispheres are starting to compare data and go, wait, why are we in a stress state right now? I don't, based on what we're seeing right now, there's no bear out there. So you get to create congruence between the two hemispheres. The brainwaves slow down into alpha and theta, and the body gets that parasympathetic sympathetic balance. So that's really, we have an online course for that as well called Moving Back into Balance. And it's a 7-week or 7-module course where you learn this spinal maintenance system and you make it your own. So you bring it into your life.
Go at your own pace, taking advantage of that
You,
digital content type of thing.
exactly. Yep. And then we also run the Alphabiotic Training Academy. And so that's the hands-on way to reset the brain out of a stress state. So it takes a couple minutes, and EEG wise, immeasurably your tension drops, weakness turns back on. You get tonus throughout the whole body. You get response time is instant in all 4 limbs, which means you're integrated and in the moment. So we run programs out of Dallas in California every year. That one's
I think that's
like
huge. If I was a entry level or a newer listener to the show hearing this right now, but I've learned that over the years, not at your level, but we talked about it today's show. If we can at least be more awake and aware of these stressful states, and then through breath work or through EDGU or Alphabiotics, right? Okay, now I've got the knowledge, I have the education to handle these situations in a much more quick and effective way. And the faster you can have that stress leave you, I think there's just so much more happy people out there.
Yeah. And that's the thing too, is you have to practice these things. And because what you're doing is you're going up against ruts in your nervous system. I like to see the nervous system as like a big snowy field, and like you've got some paths you've been walking on over and over and over and over again. So when stuff comes up, the likelihood is you're going to drop back into that path. Mm-hmm. So you have to apply yourself into methods and practices, lifestyle choices that basically first put new snow on the field. So you've got choices, and then you get the whole process of neurogenesis and neuroplasticity is to create new pathways and then have enough awareness in the moment to choose the new path when a circumstance comes up that would have put you in the old one. So it's like you have to bring these things into your lifestyle, and you literally build the tissue that supports you to stay more present so that your level of discernment can come up and go, whoa, I am really stressed, or that was really intense. Now I have this practice that can bring me back into my balance. Or there's something really stressful and I have enough wherewithal to be like, wow, I don't actually need to freak out like the lady in the car, screaming at you and flipping you off and whatever else. Yeah. That
was a 2-second response. I was like, whoa.
Right.
Whoa.
Like that was like that she had a lot more going on.
There's a lot going on there.
Right. Yeah. This wasn't you. You were just like,
no, and I'm like smiling, and I was like, whoa, hey, okay. I was like, it's gonna be okay.
Yeah. And what a gift you were, because you allowed her to get some of that out. And
she was getting it out.
Yeah, it sounded like it. So, so there's a lot of ways, but I think the so important thing is like what you said, like you taking a walk every day, take time with yourself to develop and ask good questions. Like, what about this situation? Like if you notice your mind is turning something over, it's unintegrated, right? So what can you ask yourself? How specifically is this situation actually benefiting me in regards to being of better service to others? Yeah. Or how specifically is this challenging situation benefiting me in regard, like I love teaching. That's my number one value. And so specifically, is this benefiting me in regards to teaching, right? So then I get a new lens. That's a different mindset to look at the situation that before I was like polarized against. This happened, I don't want this.
And luckily you listened to yourself. And you are the epitome, as I've always had to educate I've helped a couple of friends start up businesses in the past couple of years, because they did it themselves, but they just need a little nudge. I'm like, guys, what is the definition of entrepreneurship? You see a problem, you can actually help with the problem, and it's okay if you get paid to fix the problem. Like if you, I'm simplifying it, but it's okay. I have this passion. I see the problems. I could possibly help with that. Don't feel guilty about at least running a business that way, because clearly somebody's looking for help. They're willing to pay somebody. It's
exactly.
It's really, really simple. And I had to struggle with that years ago. So
yeah, with all businesses, it's like that. If you can provide a service, so like that's where for me, I see the biggest problem that humanity faces is this chronic unrelieved stress. So I'm like, I have to. In 25 years of looking at health, healing, movement, all these systems from all over the world, it's like this is the one thing that has bubbled up and it's on the surface, like this problem right here. Like no matter what's going on with somebody, the first thing I want to do is get their nervous system back into balance, because then I'm waking up that innate intelligence. So if I see that this is the biggest problem that humanity faces, and I've worked with over 10,000 people, then I'm like, I'm going to focus on this. And I'm
Yeah.
also going to focus on what's the least output I can do to create the greatest impact in the other. Those two factors, what's the biggest problem, and then what's the least output I can do to create the greatest impact, because that allows me to serve more.
I love that. Yeah. Well said, sir. Well, listen, we've had a solid show today. We do have to bring
Yeah.
it to a close. I hate to say that. But again, ladies and gentlemen, vitalistproject.com. And Jeffrey, because you are pretty enlightened, I would like you to help close out the show. So no challenge here, but is there some final words you want to leave behind for our closing audience? Because over the years, it was final words, then it became a legacy message. I did have two people in the past 2 years say they don't believe in legacy, but they manifested it in a more positive way. So I just loved how they spun it. But if you understand where I'm going with that, is there anything you all encompassing you'd like to leave behind for the audience?
I mean, one is that your body is brilliant, your being is brilliant. Like what you're capable of is far beyond what you could ever even imagine. And so, an invitation for you to lean into that by getting outside, by talking nicely to yourself and asking good questions, by valuing yourself with good choices, right? We're making choices every day, all day. And one of the biggest choices I would say is to start to see everything that's happened in your life as on the way rather than in the way. Because as you make that change and you start to reflect on this conversation we've had today, and you start to look at these things that you've thought, damn, that was in the way. If you can start to like, well, how was it on the way, right? You start to, as my friend John DeMartini says, you become no longer a victim of reality, but a master of destiny, right? You move from being a victim to whatever's happening to you to recognize your creative powers, your self-authorship, that you get to meet every moment, and you're filling in that content. You're the meaning maker. So if you just own that and bring the pen back in your hand and get out of the victimhood thing, you can do incredible things, and everyone has a value that's equally valuable to everyone else, because we're all on a unique journey here as a soul in a human body.
Well said. Thank you, sir. See, like I said, I'm not worried about your final words. Hard hitting. I love it. Listen, hang tight. I'll give you a proper goodbye off the air. Ladies and gentlemen, again, vitalistproject.com. There's going to be some other links here. He mentioned here the have a happy spine. And I'm going to have fun with that pragmatical term. I've been taking notes over here. I love the show today, sir. So again, ladies and gentlemen, we are here to fuel your health, your business, and your lifestyle. And Jeffrey helped us do that today. So make sure you go check out vitalistproject.com and all the other links we'll have in the show. Follow him on the socials if you're into that. And again, remember, you too can live the fuel. And we'll talk to you guys again soon.
Thanks, Scott.